Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer. We've set this up as a really energetic, high-impact virtual workshop. So if you're an educator who's transitioning to middle years program, MYP, online instruction, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're going to help you shift out of that basic survival mode and move right into the realm of really intentional, highly effective design for your virtual classrooms. We're going to unpack some incredibly practical strategies from the MYP Online Teaching Reference Guide that you can literally use in your very next session. To start us off, an MYP mathematics teacher recently shared a struggle that I'm sure hits close to home for a lot of us. They said, "Transitioning to online teaching removed my ability to perform informal formative assessment. This led to a black box effect." They were talking about losing those quick, over-the-shoulder checks that just happen naturally in a physical classroom. And honestly, we need to acknowledge this right out of the gate. That black box problem, it is incredibly real. Losing those subtle physical cues, the body language, a confused look, a whispered question to a neighbor, it's a massive struggle. But today, we're going to shift our focus from that struggle to the intentional design you need to actually solve it. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with step 1, the mindset shift. Then, step 2, the non-negotiable floor. Step 3, making MYP visible online. And finally, step 4, assessing your online practice. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the mindset shift. Okay, so the absolute most important thing for us to internalize here is that while your delivery modality is obviously changing to a digital space, the rigorous standard of IB teaching absolutely does not. We really have to design for the medium. The IB puts it perfectly. They say the MYP is built around the development of the whole person. This does not pause in online settings. They also point out that approaches to learning, or ATL skills, are especially critical right now. Things like self-management and self-regulation, they literally have to be explicitly taught. The big takeaway here is that conceptual teaching and student development aren't just put on hold. Honestly, they're even more critical now because your students are out there managing their own learning environments at home. Let's break that down just a bit further. Think about it like this. What stays exactly the same is the MYP conceptual framework itself, the expectation of differentiation, and the right of every single student to receive formative feedback. What actually changes is the modality, how you monitor engagement, and exactly how you structure collaboration. So the crucial point is this. Our goals remain identical, but our methods for engagement and formative assessment, they have to be deliberately and carefully engineered. You just can't rely on that ambient, in-the-room awareness anymore.
Section 2, the non-negotiable floor.
Look, before we can even begin to explore advanced pedagogy or cool creative digital tools, we absolutely must establish a baseline of compliance for every single session. Think of this as the solid foundation of your digital house. These 5 steps aren't just best practices, they are literally minimum requirements. Number 1, post your lesson info before the session even starts. 2, state your learning objective right at the beginning, both verbally and visually. 3, set and, more importantly, hold your camera and participation norms consistently. 4, record attendance within the session window. It's actually a welfare and policy requirement. And 5, deliver a lesson with a really clear beginning, middle, and end. You start with context, develop understanding, and close with a check for learning. And listen closely to this rule, because it's a firm one. A session that ends without a learning check is a session without evidence. You absolutely must know what they learned before they log off. Section 3, making MYP visible online.
So how do we actually take the abstract elements of the MYP framework and translate them into concrete, actionable realities in an online classroom? Well, let's look at a pretty common pitfall. A seriously insufficient practice is when a teacher just pastes the statement of inquiry, the SOI, onto a title slide, skips right past it, and never mentions it again, right? But the required standard means the SOI is actually displayed and verbally referenced. You might have a student read it out loud, or you connect a mid-session task back to it, or you ask students to make their own connection at the end of class. You see the difference? It takes it from being just some decorative text on a slide to a living, breathing part of your lesson.
Now, let's look at how this builds when we talk about approaches to learning, those ATL skills. Here, we really need to show, not just tell. This is exactly how you move from just labeling an ATL skill on your lesson plan to actively practicing it online. If the cluster is thinking, don't just throw out a basic recall question. Give them an error analysis task. Let them find the mistake in a worked example. For communication, try a teach-back method in breakout rooms instead of just lecturing at them. For social skills, don't just toss them into a breakout room and hope for the best, right? Assign specific roles like facilitator and recorder. For self-management, throw up a visible countdown timer for everyone to see. And for research, give them specific database protocols rather than just saying, hey, go Google it. The task itself becomes the skill development.
Next up, let's tackle the global context. And the data here is interesting. It shows that only a fraction of online teachers consistently connect the global context in their virtual lessons. But here is a super rapid strategy to fix that right away: the 60-second global context anchor. First, just say the connection out loud. Today's lesson connects to our context because. Second, ask the students to suggest the connection before you even finish that sentence. Third, post that connection right in the chat so it's firmly anchored for everyone. And finally, close the session by asking for a one-sentence reflection in the chat on how today's work actually matters in the real world. Doing this ensures your students always understand the real-world why behind the lesson. It completely avoids that trap of just teaching isolated content. To wrap up our framework integration, let's look at the learner profile. We want to avoid what we call the labeling trap. This is where you just pop up a neat little icon, say something like, okay, everyone, today we are being thinkers, and then proceed to deliver a 40-minute lecture. The label is there, sure, but the skill itself is totally absent. Instead, we want to elevate this to the practice standard by genuinely designing a task that explicitly demands evaluation, analysis, and independent thought. And then you close the loop at the very end of the session by asking, hey, how did you demonstrate the learner profile attribute today? Drop one specific example in the chat. This makes the learner profile an active demand on the student, not just a decorative sticker on your slide. Section 4, assessing your online practice. Okay, let's hand the power right back to you, the teacher. Let's establish a mechanism for self-reflection and personal growth as you navigate this digital landscape. We can actually use the self-assessment rubric from Section H of the reference guide. It uses a really simple 1 to 4 rating scale, ranging from not yet in place all the way up to exemplary. Just look at these specific indicators. I post lesson information early. I use at least one live check for understanding. I reference the SOI out loud. And students develop ATL skills by doing. And I really want you to view this tool not as some punitive, top-down checklist, but as an empowering mirror. It's simply a way to measure your own intentional design after a unit finishes. It highlights exactly where your practice is thriving and exactly where maybe just a slight adjustment could yield massive results for your students. So I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Think about everything we've covered today, from those non-negotiable learning checks to the 60-second global context anchor. Which single indicator will you elevate in your very next online session? Don't try to change the whole shebang at once. Pick just one strategy, design it intentionally, and watch how it transforms that black box into a vibrant, highly visible learning experience. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and good luck in your next session.